When Isaiah and Isaac Washington walked into Arizona's most elite swimming academy, the wealthy bullies who targeted them had no idea they were about to face two future Olympic champions, trained by a blacklisted coach with nothing left to lose. What started as systematic racial harassment at Phoenix Elite Aquatics became the most shocking championship upset in state history. But the real revenge came when these twin brothers didn't just destroy records, they destroyed an entire corrupt system that had been crushing dreams for decades. The bullies' families thought their money and connections made them untouchable, until they discovered that a Navy SEAL father and two determined teenagers could bring down institutions that seemed invincible. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere because of who you are or where you come from, this story will ignite a fire in your soul that burns for justice. Hit that like button if you believe talent should matter more than privilege. Drop a comment sharing your own experiences with discrimination, and subscribe because this transformation from victims to champions will restore your faith that the underdog can still win when they refuse to accept defeat. The Washington twins didn't just learn to swim faster, they learned to fight a system designed to drown their dreams, and what they accomplished will leave you cheering and inspired to never give up on your own impossible goals. When Isaiah and Isaac Washington walked through the glass doors of Phoenix Elite Aquatics for the first time, they believed they were stepping into their Olympic destiny, but what they discovered beneath those crystal-clear waters would nearly destroy their dreams forever. The twins had worked 3 jobs each that summer, cleaning pools, lifeguarding, and teaching swim lessons to younger kids, all to afford the training gear required for Scottsdale's most prestigious swimming academy. Their partial scholarships covered tuition, but everything else came out of their family's tight budget. Marcus Washington, their father, had driven them to the facility in his 10-year-old pickup truck, watching with pride as his 16-year-old sons carried their discount swim bags past rows of luxury cars in the parking lot. The Phoenix Elite Aquatics facility was everything they had imagined, and more. Olympic-sized pools gleamed under perfect lighting, while state-of-the-art timing systems and underwater cameras promised the kind of training that produced national champions. Coach Patricia Sullivan greeted them with professional courtesy, her smile warm but measuring as she explained the academy's standards and expectations. The twins listened intently, their identical faces reflecting the same mixture of excitement and determination that had carried them through years of community pool training. They had earned their spots here through pure speed, clocking times that caught college recruiters' attention despite training in facilities that other swimmers would consider inadequate. But within minutes of their first practice, the atmosphere shifted. Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley, both 18 and wearing their team captain status like armor, approached the newcomers with expressions that mixed curiosity with something far less welcoming. Blake, whose father owned 3 luxury car dealerships across Arizona, looked the twins up and down with calculated assessment. Tyler, son of a prominent real estate developer, made no effort to hide his skepticism about the academy's newest scholarship recipients. The other swimmers watched this initial interaction with the kind of anticipation that suggested they had witnessed similar scenes before. "So you're the diversity hires we've been hearing about," Blake said, his voice carrying just enough volume for nearby swimmers to hear. "Coach Sullivan loves talking about how we're expanding our reach into different communities." Tyler nodded in agreement, adding with manufactured concern, "Hope you boys can handle real training. This isn't community center swimming anymore." The words landed like ice water, but Isaiah and Isaac had faced similar comments before. They exchanged a quick glance, their twin connection allowing wordless communication, and decided to let their swimming do the talking. What they didn't realize was that Blake and Tyler had already decided their talking wouldn't matter. During that first practice, the twins found their lane assignments changed multiple times, always to the slower groups despite posting qualifying times that should have placed them with advanced swimmers. Their practice equipment mysteriously went missing, forcing them to share worn kickboards and pull buoys that other swimmers had discarded. Coach Sullivan observed these incidents with apparent blindness, her attention focused on swimmers whose parents wrote larger checks to the academy's booster fund. The twins pushed through their first week with grim determination, telling themselves that proving their worth would eventually earn them respect. But respect was never part of Blake and Tyler's plan. They had spent years as the academy's stars, their names on record boards and their college scholarships already secured. The arrival of 2 black teenagers with natural speed and hunger threatened the comfortable hierarchy they had worked to establish. By the end of their first week, Isaiah and Isaac Washington had learned that earning their place at Phoenix Elite Aquatics would require far more than just being fast in the water. But the tragedy had not stopped yet, and what Isaiah and Isaac discovered over the next month would push them to the breaking point in ways they never imagined possible. Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley had perfected their system of psychological warfare through years of practice on previous scholarship students, and they applied their methods with surgical precision against the Washington twins. Every morning practice became a gauntlet of calculated humiliation, designed to break their spirit while maintaining plausible deniability to Coach Sullivan and the paying parents who occasionally observed from the viewing area. The equipment sabotage escalated from missing gear to outright destruction. Isaiah's goggles would snap during crucial sprint sets, forcing him to swim blind while his times went unrecorded. Isaac's kickboard developed mysterious cracks that left him struggling to complete endurance sets, while Blake and Tyler offered mock sympathy about his technique problems. Their practice suits began developing tears in strategic locations, causing wardrobe malfunctions during mixed training sessions that left both twins mortified while their tormentors snickered nearby. Coach Sullivan's response was always the same measured disappointment, suggesting that swimmers who couldn't maintain their equipment might not be ready for elite-level training. The psychological attacks grew bolder as Blake and Tyler realized no authority figure would intervene. During team meetings, they would make jokes about urban swimmers needing different training methods or wonder aloud if certain athletes were genetically suited for different sports. When the twins posted fast times during individual sets, Blake would question the accuracy of their timing, suggesting that swimmers from certain backgrounds might not understand the honor system that elite athletics required. These comments were always delivered with smiles and couched in language that sounded like concern rather than hatred, making them impossible to report without seeming oversensitive. The breaking point came during a team-building exercise that Coach Sullivan called water confidence training. The drill involved swimmers treading water while teammates created artificial waves and turbulence around them, supposedly to simulate open water conditions. When Isaiah's turn came, Blake and Tyler positioned themselves on either side of him, their powerful strokes creating a washing machine effect that no swimmer could reasonably handle. As Isaiah struggled to keep his head above water, Tyler grabbed his ankles and pulled him under, while Blake created surface turbulence that made rescue impossible. The other swimmers watched in frozen horror as Isaiah disappeared beneath the churning water for what felt like an eternity. Isaac dove in without permission, breaking formation to drag his twin to the pool's edge, where Isaiah emerged coughing and gasping, his eyes wide with terror and rage. Coach Sullivan's reaction was swift and decisive, but not in the way anyone expected. She immediately suspended Isaac for disrupting a safety drill and leaving his assigned position without authorization. Isaiah, still shaking from near drowning, was told that elite swimmers needed to trust their teammates and that his panic showed he wasn't ready for advanced training scenarios. The message was crystal clear to everyone present. The Washington twins were expendable, their safety secondary to maintaining the academy's social hierarchy. Blake and Tyler had crossed a line from harassment into attempted assault, and the system had rewarded them for it. That night, as Isaiah lay in the emergency room being treated for water inhalation and Isaac sat beside him with suspension papers in his hand, both twins realized they were completely alone in this fight. Their Olympic dreams were being systematically destroyed by enemies who had institutional support, unlimited resources, and the protection of authority figures who prioritized donor relationships over student safety. The question was no longer whether they could succeed at Phoenix Elite Aquatics, but whether they could survive it long enough to find another path forward. Right at that moment, when all hope seemed lost and the Washington twins faced their darkest hour, their father Marcus was about to discover something that would change everything forever. The emergency room discharge papers in his weathered hands told a story that made his blood run cold. But it was the conversation he overheard between two nurses that ignited the fire that had been building in his chest since his sons first started coming home with mysterious bruises and deflated spirits. Third kid from that elite swim academy this year, one nurse whispered to another. Same story every time. Water confidence drill gone wrong, they always call it. But honey, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know the difference between an accident and something else entirely. Marcus Washington hadn't survived 2 tours in Afghanistan in 8 years as a Navy SEAL by ignoring his instincts, and every alarm bell in his combat-trained mind was screaming that his sons were under attack. That night, while Isaiah recovered from his near-drowning experience and Isaac stared at the ceiling processing his suspension, their father began conducting the kind of investigation that had once helped him track insurgents through hostile territory. What he discovered over the next 72 hours would have made his old commanding officers proud, but it made him as a father absolutely furious. Hospital records showed a pattern that Phoenix Elite Aquatics had successfully buried for 3 years running. 7 different minority scholarship students had been hospitalized for drowning-related incidents during safety training exercises. Each case had been dismissed as an unfortunate accident. Each family had been convinced their child simply wasn't ready for elite-level training, and each scholarship had been quietly terminated for safety concerns. The Academy's lawyer had crafted bulletproof legal language that shifted blame to the victims while protecting the institution and its star athletes from any consequences. But Marcus Washington wasn't like the other parents who had accepted defeat and walked away quietly. His military contacts included former teammates who now worked in private investigation, legal advocacy, and sports management. Within 48 hours, he had compiled evidence that would have impressed a federal prosecutor, including testimony from former Academy employees who had been fired for questioning the training methods, and recorded conversations with other families who had been too intimidated to speak publicly about their experiences. The breakthrough came when Marcus connected with Maria Santos, a former Olympic coach who had been blacklisted from elite swimming after refusing to cover up similar incidents at another facility in California. Maria had been watching Phoenix Elite Aquatics from afar, documenting their pattern of abuse and waiting for the right moment to act. When Marcus contacted her with his evidence and his son's story, she saw an opportunity for the justice that had been denied to so many other families. If you're feeling as fired up as I am right now, smash that like button because this story is about to get incredible. Comment below if you've ever seen this kind of injustice in your own community, and hit subscribe because what happens next will restore your faith that good people can still win when they refuse to give up. Maria Santos didn't just offer the Washington family sympathy, she offered them something far more powerful: a secret training facility, Olympic-level coaching, and a plan that would expose Phoenix Elite Aquatics for what it really was. But first, Marcus had to make a choice that would put his entire family at risk. He could accept the system's verdict that his sons didn't belong in elite swimming, or he could declare war on an institution that had money, connections, and a 3-year winning streak against families just like his. The decision he made that night would change not just his sons' lives, but the entire landscape of competitive swimming in Arizona forever. What happened next would have been impossible to believe if you hadn't seen it with your own eyes. But Marcus Washington made the decision that would transform his sons from victims into weapons of pure aquatic destruction. Within 72 hours of that hospital room conversation, the Washington family garage had been converted into something that looked more like a Navy SEAL training facility than a suburban storage space. Maria Santos had connections that most people could only dream of, including access to a private training complex that had been used to prepare Olympic swimmers in secret for over a decade. The twins' new reality was split between 2 completely different worlds. Every morning, they reported to Phoenix Elite Aquatics, where they continued to endure Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley's systematic harassment, their performances deliberately sabotaged and their times mysteriously unrecorded. Coach Sullivan maintained her facade of professional disappointment, suggesting that perhaps the Washington boys simply lacked the mental toughness required for elite competition. But what none of them realized was that every evening, Isaiah and Isaac were receiving training that made their daytime torment look like child's play. Maria Santos didn't just coach swimmers, she created champions, and her methods were unlike anything the twins had ever experienced. While Blake and Tyler relied on natural talent and expensive equipment, the Washington brothers were learning techniques that Olympic medalists used to shave hundreds of seconds off world records. Their stroke mechanics were rebuilt from the ground up, their breathing patterns optimized for maximum efficiency, and their mental game strengthened through visualization exercises that Navy SEALs used to prepare for combat missions. The physical transformation was remarkable, but the psychological change was even more dramatic. Isaiah and Isaac learned to compartmentalize their emotions, channeling the rage and humiliation they felt during morning practices into fuel for their evening training sessions. Every racist comment from Blake became motivation for an extra 100 meters of sprint work. Every piece of sabotaged equipment translated into additional hours, perfecting their technique. Their father watched this metamorphosis with the pride of a military commander seeing raw recruits transform into elite operators. The most challenging part wasn't the grueling training schedule or the dual life they were living. It was maintaining the illusion of weakness when they were becoming stronger every day. During academy practices, the twins had to consciously swim slower than their actual capabilities, deliberately maintaining times that wouldn't raise suspicion while Blake and Tyler continued their campaign of harassment. There were moments when Isaiah nearly broke character, especially when Tyler made particularly vicious comments about their family's financial situation, but Isaac's steadying presence always brought him back to their long-term strategy. Coach Sullivan's suspicion grew as weeks passed, and the twins showed no signs of breaking under pressure. She had perfected a system that usually drove scholarship students away within 2 months, but the Washington brothers seemed to be adapting rather than crumbling. She began assigning them more demanding sets, hoping to expose their limitations, not realizing that her most challenging workouts were easier than their nightly training sessions with Maria Santos. The regional championships were approaching, and Sullivan was confident that Blake and Tyler would dominate as they always had, completely unaware that two supposedly mediocre scholarship swimmers were about to rewrite every record on her facility's walls. No one expected what was about to unfold at the Arizona Regional Swimming Championships, but when Isaiah and Isaac Washington stepped onto the pool deck that Saturday morning, they carried with them the power to destroy everything Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley had built over their entire swimming careers. The Phoenix Elite Aquatics team arrived in their matching warm-up suits, Blake and Tyler leading the group with the confident swagger of athletes who had never experienced defeat at this level. Coach Sullivan surveyed the competition with satisfaction, knowing that her star swimmers held the top seed times in multiple events and that college scouts were specifically there to watch them perform. The twins had spent the previous night visualizing this moment with Maria Santos, running through race scenarios and mental preparation techniques that Olympic athletes used before the biggest competitions of their lives. Marcus Washington sat in the bleachers, his military-trained eyes scanning the crowd and noting the positions of various coaches, parents, and officials who would witness what was about to become the most shocking upset in Arizona high school swimming history. The preliminary sessions were designed to seed swimmers for finals, and most observers expected the Washington twins to barely qualify for the slower heats. Blake Morrison stepped behind the starting blocks for the first event, the 200-meter freestyle, with the casual confidence of someone who had won this race for 3 consecutive years. His personal best time was posted on the heat sheet, a mark that had attracted interest from Division I college programs and established him as one of the premier distance swimmers in the Southwest. Tyler Kingsley prepared for his specialty, the 100-meter butterfly, an event where his explosive power and technical precision had made him virtually unbeatable among his age group competitors. What happened next defied every expectation and shattered every assumption about talent, training, and natural ability. Isaiah Washington, swimming in lane 2 of what was supposed to be a slower preliminary heat, exploded off the starting blocks with a dive that cut through the water like a missile. His stroke technique was flawless, his breathing pattern mathematically precise, and his pace so aggressive that spectators began murmuring before he reached the first turn. By the 100-meter mark, he was ahead of Blake Morrison's record pace, and by 150 meters, it was clear that something extraordinary was happening. When Isaiah touched the wall, the electronic timing system displayed numbers that caused complete silence in the natatorium. He had not just beaten Blake Morrison's time, he had demolished it by over 2 seconds, setting a new state record in the process. The shocked silence lasted approximately 3 seconds before the crowd erupted in confused excitement. College scouts frantically checked their heat sheets, and Coach Sullivan's face went white with disbelief. Isaac Washington's performance in the butterfly was even more devastating. Tyler Kingsley, watching from the warm-down pool, could only stare in horror as Isaac's underwater dolphin kicks carried him nearly to the 25-meter mark before he surfaced. His stroke rate was impossibly high, his technique absolutely perfect, and his finish so explosive that he beat Tyler's personal best by nearly 3 seconds. The message boards around the pool displayed times that seemed like computer errors, but the officials confirmed what everyone was struggling to process. The Washington twins had not just qualified for finals, They had destroyed every record that Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley had spent years establishing, and they had done it while swimming in preliminary heats that were supposed to be warm-ups for the real competition. The championship finals were still hours away, but everyone in that building knew they had just witnessed the beginning of a complete changing of the guard in Arizona swimming. But the humiliation was far from over, and what happened after those record-breaking performances would expose the true character of everyone involved in ways that shocked even the most cynical observers. Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley sat in stunned silence as the reality of their public destruction sank in, their college scholarship dreams evaporating in real time as coaches who had been recruiting them suddenly found reasons to leave early. The Phoenix Elite Aquatics parents section buzzed with frantic, whispered conversations, their carefully constructed worldview crumbling as they watched two scholarship students they had dismissed as charity cases rewrite the record books with surgical precision. Richard Morrison, Blake's father, was the first to lose his composure completely. His face flushed red with rage and embarrassment as he stormed toward the pool deck, shouting accusations that echoed throughout the natatorium. "This is fraud!" he screamed at meet officials, his voice cracking with desperate fury. "Those boys are using performance-enhancing drugs. There's no way scholarship kids swim times like that without cheating." David Kingsley joined him immediately, his real estate developer's commanding presence faltering as he pointed accusingly at the Washington family. "We demand drug testing. We demand an investigation. Our sons have trained their entire lives for this, and we won't let some affirmative action swimmers destroy their futures." The accusations flew fast and furious, each one more desperate than the last. Coach Sullivan, her professional reputation crumbling before her eyes, claimed that the Washington twins had been hiding their true abilities in training elsewhere, violating academy policies and competition rules. The meet director, a patient man who had overseen regional championships for over a decade, calmly explained that all swimmers would be subject to standard drug testing and that times achieved through legal training methods could not be challenged regardless of who achieved them. Marcus Washington rose from his seat in the bleachers, his military bearing commanding immediate attention as he approached the group of angry parents and officials. His voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded respect in life-or-death situations, and every word was measured with the precision of a man who had learned to choose his battles carefully. "My sons earned every second of those times through hard work and proper training," he said, his tone deadly calm. "If you have evidence of wrongdoing, present it. If you don't, then accept that your boys got beaten by better swimmers." The confrontation escalated when Richard Morrison made the fatal mistake of stepping too close to Marcus and making a comment about knowing your kind's place in elite athletics. The racial slur hung in the air for exactly 1 second before Marcus Washington's Navy SEAL training took over, and Morrison found himself face down on the pool deck with his arm twisted behind his back in a submission hold that had been perfected in combat zones. David Kingsley's attempt to intervene resulted in him joining Morrison on the wet concrete, both men gasping and humiliated while their sons watched in horror. Security arrived quickly, but the damage was done. Cell phone videos of the confrontation were already going viral on social media, showing two wealthy white fathers making racist accusations and then being systematically dominated by a black Navy SEAL who had remained calm and professional throughout the entire incident. The story exploded across Arizona swimming circles within hours, with the headline, "Black Twins Destroy Records, Racist Parents Destroy Themselves," trending on multiple platforms. Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley's swimming careers were effectively over, their college prospects eliminated not just by their poor performances, but by their families' public display of racism and entitlement. What happened next would prove that true victory isn't just about winning races, but about transforming entire systems and creating lasting change that protects future generations from the same injustices. 6 months after that championship showdown, the ripple effects of Isaiah and Isaac Washington's triumph had completely restructured the landscape of competitive swimming throughout Arizona. Phoenix Elite Aquatics had closed its doors permanently after losing every major sponsor and facing a federal civil rights investigation that exposed decades of systematic discrimination against minority athletes. Coach Patricia Sullivan's teaching credentials were permanently revoked when investigators discovered email evidence of her deliberate sabotage of scholarship students' training records and college recruitment opportunities. The Academy's board of directors, faced with multiple lawsuits from families of previously targeted swimmers, agreed to a settlement that funded a new nonprofit organization dedicated to providing elite-level training for underprivileged athletes of all backgrounds. Blake Morrison and Tyler Kingsley never swam competitively again, their college scholarships revoked, and their reputations permanently tainted by their family's racist outbursts that had been viewed millions of times across social media platforms. The transformation was most visible at the newly established Washington Aquatic Excellence Center, where Marcus and Maria Santos had created something unprecedented in competitive swimming. The facility, built with settlement money and corporate sponsorships from companies eager to associate with the inspiring story, provided Olympic-level coaching to any talented swimmer, regardless of their family's financial situation. Isaiah and Isaac, now ranked among the top swimmers in their events nationally, spent their afternoons coaching younger athletes and sharing the techniques that had carried them from victims to champions. The psychological impact extended far beyond swimming pools and medal standings. The Washington Twins had become symbols of what was possible when talent met opportunity and when families refused to accept systematic injustice as inevitable. High school swimmers across the country began reaching out to share their own stories of discrimination and harassment, creating a network of athletes committed to supporting each other against institutional bias. College coaches, stung by the revelation that they had nearly missed recruiting two of the most promising swimmers in the nation, began actively seeking talent in communities they had previously ignored. Marcus Washington's proudest moment came not when his sons qualified for the Olympic trials, but when a young Latina swimmer approached him after practice to thank him for showing her that she belonged in elite athletics, regardless of what anyone else believed about her potential. The Washington Aquatic Excellence Center had become a sanctuary where talent was recognized and developed without regard for last names, zip codes, or checking account balances. Isaiah and Isaac understood that their victory had created responsibilities as well as opportunities, and they embraced their role as leaders who could open doors that had been closed to previous generations. The story that began with two teenagers being systematically humiliated and nearly drowned had evolved into a movement that challenged every assumption about who deserved access to elite athletic training. The Washington Twins had learned that true champions don't just win races, they create pathways for others to follow, and they use their platforms to ensure that talent and determination matter more than privilege and connections. Their Olympic dreams were still alive and stronger than ever, but they had already achieved something more important than any medal. They had proven that excellence recognizes no boundaries except those we impose on ourselves, and they had built a legacy that would inspire athletes for generations to come. The Washington Twins' journey from drowning victims to record-breaking champions teaches us the most powerful lesson about overcoming systematic injustice. When the system is designed to break you, you don't just survive it, you become strong enough to rebuild it entirely. As someone who has witnessed countless talented individuals crushed by institutional bias, I can tell you that Isaiah and Isaac's story represents something profound about the difference between temporary victories and lasting change. They didn't just beat their bullies in the pool, they dismantled the entire corrupt structure that had protected those bullies for years, creating opportunities for future generations who might have faced the same discrimination. The real transformation wasn't their swimming times, though those were incredible. It was their understanding that true champions don't just win for themselves, they win for everyone who comes after them. Marcus Washington's decision to fight rather than accept defeat, Maria Santos's willingness to risk everything for justice, and the Twins' commitment to helping other young athletes shows us that individual courage can spark systemic change when we refuse to accept that things have to stay the way they've always been. Every person watching this story has faced moments when they were told they didn't belong, when systems seemed rigged against them, when giving up felt easier than fighting back. The Washington family's victory proves that preparation plus persistence, plus the refusal to accept injustice, can overcome even the most entrenched discrimination. They turn their pain into power, their isolation into inspiration, and their near destruction into a platform for lifting others. If this story fired you up the way it should, smash that like button. Because stories like this need to be heard by everyone who's ever felt powerless against unfair systems. Drop a comment telling us about a time you or someone you know had to fight for respect they deserved, and hit that subscribe button because we're building a community of people who believe that talent, character, and determination should always triumph over privilege, prejudice, and power. The next story we're sharing will blow your mind even more, featuring another underdog who refused to accept defeat and changed everything in the process. Your support helps us find and tell these incredible stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So click that notification bell and join us in celebrating the champions who prove that justice isn't just possible, it's inevitable when good people refuse to give up.